Hi, my name is James Andrella, and you are listening to the Back to Human podcast. On today's show, we are going to be talking about an awesome little device that I have called a KAATSU, which I'm actually wearing right now. So if you're viewing this on YouTube or Rumble, you can actually kind of see what I'm talking about. And this is something that I've been using in my training for the previous 3 or so years. It's helped with muscle growth, with muscle recovery. I've noticed improvements with my skin health as well. And you may or may not be familiar with blood flow restriction training. So on the show, we're going to be talking about the benefits that can be had by incorporating blood flow restriction training into your regimen and what makes this device just a little bit different. So on the show with me today, I have the CEO and co-founder of KAATSU, which is a revolutionary device that makes blood flow restriction training pretty much safe for everyone. So on the show with me today, I have Steven Munatones. Without further ado, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Glad
joining
to be here.
Yeah, excited for this one, man.
Yes.
So would you mind giving my audience a brief background of how KAATSU got started?
It's actually quite interesting. It was Dr. Sato. He wasn't a doctor then, but he was a young man, and one of his relatives passed away, and they, like many cultures around the world, they had an equivalent of a wake, or so their celebration of life. And in Japan, that happens in a temple most of the time. And he was sitting on his ankles, and when he was sitting on his ankles, blood is restricted to your lower limb. But when he went to go massage his calf, because his calf got really tight, he actually thought, "Oh my gosh, my calf is tight, just like I was doing calf raises." And he goes, "What if I," at the time was thinking, "if I do weightlifting and I actually restrict my blood flow to my leg, can I get stronger? Can I make my muscle feel pumped up like I did when I was sitting down?" And that was the inspiration. Now, subsequent to that, he did literally 30 years of experimentation. He started off with bicycle tire tubes, and he literally would wrap his arm, his elbow, his wrist. He wrapped his forehead, his chest. He wrapped every part of his body, but he took meticulous notes, like what part of the body at what pressures and how long would maximize his muscle growth. And by 2000, 7 years later, he actually came up with the initial protocols. And then it took him another 20 years to actually fine tune it. And we use those protocols to this day. So that's the background. It was a single Japanese sort of free thinker associated his pumped up calf muscles with the ability to, do I restrict blood flow? Do I keep blood flow in? And he just did a bunch of experiments by himself. And lo and behold, we have KAATSU, which means additional pressure. So it's a Japanese word that actually means, and what his idea was, I'll put these bands on my arms and legs. I'll put additional pressure to affect change in the body.
So it's kind of like a way of having tension without needing like external heavy loads all the time.
Correct. And he knew at the time that he was developing it, that the Japanese population was aging, getting old fast. And he knew that, the sarcopenia, which is the wasting of muscle tissue, would be a big deal as we, as a lot of older Japanese people became in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, etc. And so he said, well, if I can actually make muscle building, strength building, balance, agility easier for older people to do at their home, at their desk, on their couch, etc., then we will have fewer medical issues, musculoskeletal issues, as we get older. So that was one of his big, huge drivers to explore the world of KAATSU.
So he was practicing this for 20 years before implementation. You said that he wasn't a doctor before. So he was just doing this on his own. He was his own little guinea pig.
Correct.
I'm very curious what he found with the forehead wrapping, if he felt his brain bigger.
Yeah. All of the places in the body didn't result in anything. So when he put around his forehead, basically it was a very tight headband. or he would put it around his wrist, and he realized that he wasn't trapping blood in the muscle of the upper arm. So he put it, by his ankle, above his knee, below his knee, etc., and put it around his waist, his abdomen, above his belly button and below his belly button. But he was always taking, and he would do that for a period of time, the same period of time, and then see the effects. Most of these never resulted in anything. Some of them actually resulted in him becoming less strong. His muscles would be less able to withstand stress. When he came across the bands where you have him on now, the upper arm, then thinking, how the human anatomy works and how we want to engorge the limb and blood, and any working muscle that we do, whether we're walking, lifting weights, etc., that working muscle is engorged in blood. And then he realized, those are the two magic places you can put the bands on the human body to affect change from a head to toe. And that is the upper arms or the upper legs. And so it was many, many years of experimentation. And he took meticulous notes. He took a tape measure and he would measure himself. He would do a bench press, leg press, etc., to always see if the effects were actually true or not. Of course, he was an N of one, so it was just him. And then about 1973 on, then he started to work with the people around his neighborhood. And then wider and wider, his reputation grew. And by the 1990s, then he was able to attract the attention of high-level academic researchers and scientists at the University of Tokyo Hospital. They saw the effects of what he was doing, but nobody really understood why it was happening. And so that was another 10 years of fundamental research to figure out why in the world, when you put bands on your upper arms or upper legs, you engorge the vascular tissue and blood, do you have all of these benefits? And as the scientists and Dr. Sato experimented, tested, researched, etc., then they started, the process in the human body started to become very clear. And when it became clear, then it became, that is very logical. And then in 2004 to 2014, for a 10-year period, they tested over 12,000, mostly older people, to see if they could affect the same muscular benefits, meaning larger muscle, stronger muscles. And when, an older person at 75 has stronger leg muscles, the likelihood of them falling and tripping becomes very, very low. So they're not going to break a bone if they trip, or they can walk up 3 flights of stairs. There's all these other benefits that he found as a result, and they continued to do testing during that 10-year period, including with over 2,000 people who had cardiac issues, so a heart attack, heart bypass surgery, stroke, etc. And what we wanted to do was actually make the protocols and the equipment as safe as possible. So as you said in the introduction, anybody could use it.
And that's very encouraging to hear, because he was working with an older population. Clearly there was 12,000 case studies, essentially, all with different issues. I'm sure everyone was coming in with something different, and even heart attack patients. So the elderly are people that are kind of very cautious, like they're already a little bit at a disadvantage because of something like sarcopenia, or maybe they've had a heart attack. So they're going to get the mixed message that, no, you shouldn't work out strenuously. You shouldn't really be exercising this way, that way. Meanwhile, that's what's actually going to help them. So something as simple as tying a band around your arm, that can elicit results in muscle growth and cardiovascular health as well. Like that's kind of unheard of, which is why this is such a cool little device.
Yes.
What's crazy is, I'm sorry, but
no, go ahead.
What's crazy is, like, people go to a pharmacy or something like that to get their blood pressure taken, and that's kind of the same concept, no? But it's not. It's a little bit different, I suppose.
Yeah. So what actually happens when you engorge, meaning you have more blood in your arms, your legs than normal, that actually replicates exactly what happens when we exercise. So you're sitting there, I'm sitting there, we have our bands on. we have more blood in our arms at this point. We have our bands on our upper arms. What's happening is that vascular tissue, those capillaries, veins, and arteries are expanding more than normal. Mm-hmm. The only time they actually expand more than normal, normally, is when we exercise.
Yeah.
If you and I were doing a farmer's carry, bench press, push-ups, burpees, jumping rope, walking on the beach, etc., our vascular tissue of our arms or our legs would actually be expanding and contracting. But we're just sitting here talking. Mm-hmm. And at that time, our body and our brain doesn't actually know that we're sitting down. Our brain is captured in this skull. Our body is within us. It has no idea that you and I aren't doing push-ups. However, with the engorgement of blood in our limbs, that same condition is what happens when we do push-ups. And so that signal is sent to our brain, and the brain receives this signal, the same signal that we would have if we were doing push-ups or some kind of exercise or movement. And then it does what the brain normally does. It sends out growth hormones, beta endorphins, adrenaline, etc., because the brain has no idea we're doing push-ups, bench press, or KAATSU. Mm-hmm. And so that's the beauty of KAATSU, especially for older people, but also for younger people who may lead a sedentary life. You know, we just came out of the COVID era. So a lot of us were trapped at home, especially here in California. You know, it was a work from home, you know, stay in home, quarantine, etc. And so people weren't going out. We weren't walking as we normally do. But those of us who had KAATSU, we were just sitting here mm-hmm. as everybody else was in the quarantine, except our limbs were engorged in blood, replicating exactly the same physiological mechanism that happens when we do exercise. And that's the beauty of this device.
It's crazy because it's honestly like one of the life's biggest cheat codes. It's like instead of having to go to the gym and lift heavy weights and potentially hurt yourself, you don't have to do any of that. You can literally just have bands on you and fat will melt off. Your cardiovascular health will improve. So it's literally like a cheat code. Yeah. And so I'm currently doing the cycles. There's obviously a training mode too, which I guess we can get into later. How is it possible to just have benefits from the cycle alone where it's contracting, the bands are expanding a little bit, you're restricting some of the blood flow, you're having the blood pool, compared to where you're actually doing the training mode where the bands are pumped up constantly?
Yes. Yeah.
So you get pretty much the same exact stimulus, because I've actually had a client of mine that lost weight just by doing house chores, wearing the KAATSU, doing cycles.
Yes, absolutely. So let's look at what the human anatomy and the physiological process occurs when we do KAATSU. So we'll look at first the cycle mode, which is 30 seconds of pressure, 5 seconds of no pressure. So the bands inflate for 30 seconds and deflate for 5 seconds. Then we have what we now call the constant mode, where the bands just inflate and stay there. So the 30 seconds of pressure on, 5 seconds of pressure off. Reason why that is highly beneficial is because you can actually have time under tension for much longer period of time. So you have 30 seconds of pressure, release, 30 seconds of pressure, relax, et cetera, et cetera. On this side of the equation, you have just constant pressure. It can get intense. Mm-hmm. And whether you're a Navy SEAL, a young collegiate athlete, a Olympic star, there's always a limit how much pressure, how much tension, how much exercise you can do. But if you have every 30 seconds, you get a relief, a rest period, that actually time under tension can expand much, much longer. So instead of, let's say, 10 minutes of gutting it out, in the cycle, if you do, let's say, 6 cycle sets, and we're getting a little bit detailed here, you could be time under tension for 30 minutes, while your client used to do household chores. So if she or he, if they had the bands on for only 10 minutes, definitely get benefit without a doubt, but it's still only 10 minutes. There's only so much growth hormone, so much adrenaline that you can produce in 10 minutes. In 30 minutes, cumulatively, there's much more.
Yeah.
And it's really that issue of time under tension. And then also, so that's one aspect. The second aspect is that a time under tension, when you are in a constant mode, the bands are totally inflated. It's intense.
Yeah.
And there is some limit that you do with the pressure on, pressure off. That actually rate of perceived discomfort, exercise, exertion, etc., falls. And so most people aren't a Navy SEAL. Most people aren't an Olympic athlete. So they are very much like me. We'd much rather do relaxed exercise for 30 minutes, typing away on my computer, reading a book, walking a dog, folding clothes, get more benefit than 10 minutes of intensity. It's just much more relaxing. So those are the two big differentials between what we call the cycle mode and what we now call the constant mode.
Yeah, because we're sitting here comfortably and we're not breaking a sweat or anything like that.
No.
But there's still some physiological hormones and chemicals that are being released and that are beneficial.
Correct. And what's happening is when that when the vascular tissue engorges the blood for 30 seconds, when it expands, and then with every heartbeat, it'll be reduced. So dun, 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 expand, contract, expand, contract, expand. It's actually that expansion, that moment of expansion where we get a lot of benefit. So if you only have one expansion, you may have growth hormones, but that expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction leads to, for example, a lot more nitric oxide being produced, a lot more vascular endothelial cells, and other molecules that are helpful for our body.
Because I was under the impression that the growth hormone released, which is anti-aging and it'll help with lipolysis, the breakdown of fats, that was a stimulation just from the lactic acid buildup. Like if you're in constant training mode.
That 100% correct. However, we found you don't need to be intense. You can have what we call micro movements, and that wasn't always known to us. So the micro movements, the turning of a page, a holding of a book, texting, typing on the computer, playing the piano, reading the newspaper, magazine, whatever you're doing, those micro movements are enough to generate sufficient amounts of lactate, not maximum amount of lactate, but sufficient amount. And that sends the signal to the brain, and then the brain releases the growth hormone. So we originally thought, many decades ago, it had to be maximized. But, it doesn't have to be maximized. We've now known that. So we were able to dial down the intensity of KAATSU and dial down so it becomes much more comfortable to do, much more sustainable to do, because outside of a soldier, a lead athlete, etc., not a lot of people want to always work hard. If you can get 90% of the benefit with a third of the rate of perceived exertion, great. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, because the training mode, even for myself, it's not too comfortable sometimes. Like my arms, like they're literally going to fall off, and they get meaty, sometimes purple, which isn't going to be a very easy sell to someone for the very first time.
Absolutely.
So these patients that he was working on as well, they were elderly or they had some cardiovascular issues. How did you guys approach them with this? Because it's a very scary thought to restrict blood flow when you have an issue with your cardiovascular system.
Yeah. I think that because these people were treated by physicians have an air of authority. Obviously, they have a very high level of education. And when most people listen to a physician, especially if you're in his clinic or his hospital, you listen to that doctor. You take in what they said, and they say, we're actually, KAATSU isn't restricting the blood going in. It's just slowing the blood going back. And that's why our hands get pink or red, or in your case, when you do the constant mode, training mode, it gets purple. Mm. So when the physician tells the patient, hey, we're going to try this on you, we think it's beneficial, they always have the option to say, well, doctor, I'm a little nervous. I don't want to do it. But enough people said, yeah, I want to try it. And when enough people tried it, then it was sort of a vortex. Oh, wow, that's really good. So they were able to draw in more and more people who were interested. So we had the benefit of very esteemed, respected cardiologists, because it was driven by cardiologists to get people who had all of these issues. And it didn't always have to be someone who had heart bypass surgery. It could have been someone who had diabetes, someone who fell off their bike, whatever the situation was. He was getting people interested in something that can benefit them. And then the physical therapist would say, normally your broken arm would have taken X number of weeks to heal. People would say, oh, well, I got out of my cast in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And remarkably, most people understand that when you're in a cast, or you're injured, or you have to immobilize your limb for some period of time, even a week, even 2 weeks, that your muscles atrophy. What these people were seeing was no atrophy. And obviously, when, let's say you and I, if we break a leg, now we're in this big brace, a walking boot, etc. Normally, the body will heal itself, and then we take off the cast or the brace, whatever it is, and then we see one leg is smaller than the other. Especially for older people, that affects their gait. Now they're walking with a limp, or now they need to use a cane or walker. Now, during that 10-year period, they were able to demonstrate that their muscles were not atrophying during this period of time of rehabilitation and recovery. And they just told their friends, and friends told friends, and friends told other friends, and it grew within Japan.
That's awesome, because you have the atrophy, so it's great for anyone that's preparing for surgery. Like, I've had ACL surgery in the past, and my leg just shrunk to like a chicken leg. It did not look pretty at all. If I would have known about it then, I probably would have purchased one of these. But it's great for preparing for surgery, great for after surgery as well. I think I even read somewhere that Dr. Sato, he broke his ankle.
Yes.
Then he just intuitively knew what to do, and it healed within was it 2 days, or am I?
No. It was a few weeks, but it was supposed to be out. So we have some anecdotal stories that we receive by email or phone. People just are floored with what they have. People with broken bones, people with cracked ribs, people with broken clavicles. We do a lot with the military. And so we have a lot of injuries from either war or training, horrific injuries. And so we've seen this just unprecedented reduction of rehabilitation, and then a similarly unheard of reduction in recovery, because the muscle isn't atrophying, because the individual has the stamina that they had, just 3 weeks before. Normally, when you had your ACL surgery, not only did your leg shrink, you probably didn't have the same level of stamina that you had before. You were just not there. So this is what KAATSU, pressure on, pressure off, pressure on, pressure off, allows the body to do, because it's replicating the different forms of movement or exercise.
And what about like the blood that is pooling in there? Is that area that is affected receiving more nutrients?
Absolutely. There's all kinds of processes that are happening. Obviously, when you are slowing down the blood to go back to the limb, it's slightly deoxygenated, or there's a level of hypoxia that occurs. Then in itself enables the body to become more resilient. Everything we do in the sports world, trying to push ourselves, run faster, jump higher, lift more. All of these are placing different stresses on the human body, stresses that allow the human body to be as resilient, strong, agile, balanced as possible. With KAATSU, we're just adding those pressures with bands on our arms and legs, and then we're adding in different protocols that we've developed over the decades. And, you know, whether you're a shot putter, javelin thrower, sprinter, basketball player, you know, carpenter, painter, musician, you know, a lot of these professions, whether they're in the sports world or the professional world, are repetitive motions. You know, carpenters are hitting nails. Pianists are sitting down doing this. Swimmers are moving their shoulders. Marathon runners are just pounding their ankles and legs. So those overuse injuries with KAATSU can be dealt with very effectively because of this cycle mode that we have and that you use. So, you know, these, in addition to the equipment, there is how do you use the equipment to get stronger, more resilient, bounce back faster. And so those are the things that we have developed over time.
Now, I want to get into in a second how you can kind of train both muscles at the same time, because the deoxygenating blood, you mentioned that. But I kind of want to go back to with the clinical trials of 12,000 case studies. Pretty much these people were gaining muscle just with the tubes on their arm, just with cycles.
Right.
I believe back then were just the bicycle tubes. We didn't have these. Was there any change in their nutritional intake at all? Was like protein, were they recommended to eat more protein, or was the muscle growth strictly just based off of time under tension?
Yes. So that very good point. And I think if we were in a homogeneous country like the United States, where we have races and cultures from around the world, the advantage that we had, or the advantage that Dr. Sato and the researchers had in Japan, is everybody in Japan, or nearly everybody in Japan, is Japanese, and nearly everybody has the same diet. So it wasn't their control group was even more controlled than here in the United States, because everybody was eating fish and rice and fermented vegetables, for example. That's just part of the standard Japanese diet. So there was no control or monitoring of the nutritional intake, because everybody in the test, everybody had a Japanese mother, a Japanese father, Japanese grandmother, Japanese grandfather. So we didn't do any control of testing. What we did find out is the different levels of pressure. And that was a very key point. So, for example, if you and I went to the gym and we start out with, let's say, the bench press, that you and I would know very quickly, okay, this is my maximum amount that I can lift one time. This is the max amount I can lift 12 times, for example. We know that. Gradually, the goal of KAATSU is actually to have that same effect with different pressures and different times. So our world in KAATSU is based on pressure and time, as opposed to resistance or weight. And that also is true for stamina. You know, we were training not only runners and swimmers and rowers, but also people who had, let's say, a hip surgery or knee surgery, and they were down, and we simply wanted to get them back up and rehabilitate so they can go to work normally. They can walk their dog, etc. So sort of the experimental period of KAATSU's corporate life was finding out what those pressures are. What are the standard pressures for people of this level a strength or stamina? What are the right pressures for these people, and what are the pressures for these people? And so we didn't look at nutrition. We looked at time under tension and pressure.
I'm curious if you would see Well, I mean, I'm sure you've heard of different cases over here now, but since we don't have the same kind of standard, we don't have the same type of baseline where our society is eating pretty much the same stuff. I'm curious what the difference in results would be just with that time and attention.
Oh, I'm sure there would be all kinds of differences. I mean, the study of nutrition is very well developed. Now you could have, your vegan crowd versus your ketogenic crowd, but really the basic nutrients, I think, are well understood by people. So if we did have two groups of people and we gave sort of the standard diet to this group and some difference in nutrition in this group, I am sure that you would see a difference, especially we know, for example, with KAATSU, when you eat and when you hydrate does affect those two parameters, time under tension and the amount of pressure. We know that for a given person. Mm-hmm. And so let's say you're 6'6" and very lean versus, let's say, a stocky person, and you're a stocky person who's very well built. Well, they're going to have different nutritional needs and intake. So we know that to be true. And I think the premise that, if you eat right, you can actually add more muscle than if you eat, let's say, a heavy carb focused diet.
Yeah. I mean, that's logical, pretty logical.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's progressions, there's pretty much levels for everyone, which is why there's different cycle modes and everything like that. So obviously you wouldn't want to go for the highest level if you're just starting out with this.
That's true.
And I think it's important to note that anyone that's listening to this, because I've worked with NFL athletes, collegiate athletes in the past, that if you are going to do blood flow restriction training, you need to actually reduce the weight that you are working with. So it's probably not going to be ideal to go bench press 315 pounds with these things boosted up to their maximum, because then you are setting yourself up for injury. And one of the goals that I know of KAATSU is to work with the elderly population. You can get the results without being prone to injury by lifting heavy weights. So you can literally do bicep curls with 2-pound weights, and it'll feel like you're lifting 50 pounds. Like your arms will feel like they're about to fall off. You will feel that burn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I've used it for in my training, I mean, I've done sprints with them, and the feeling that you get after it is almost addicting. Like I'll admit that there was times when I was doing 2 or 3 KAATSU workouts a day.
Yeah.
And I just felt so much better afterwards. You feel faster, more agile. And to get into it now, so you can train both slow and fast twitch muscle fibers at the same time. So you can increase your endurance while also increasing hypertrophy and strength simultaneously.
Correct.
When generally in the strength training world, people tend to want to focus on one attribute at a time.
Yes. Yeah. So, and that is quite unique. When you think about the mechanism of KAATSU and you think about, that engorgement of blood in the limb, then you've got, very basic, you got your slow twitch muscles and your fast twitch muscles. And as you said, most people like to focus on one or the other. You're either out on the track or on the basketball court sprinting away, or you're in the weight room lifting away, one or the other. When you do engorge the limbs in blood in a controlled manner with KAATSU, actually those two processes start overlapping with one another. It's a very unique physiological condition in the body. And that is where, at the highest levels, whether it's our special forces, whether it's police officers, whether it's someone very high in their field, it doesn't matter. It could be a pianist who has to give 2 or 3 performances a night. It could be an acrobat in Las Vegas who are doing 2 or 3 performances a night. It could be an Olympic athlete or professional athlete. When those individuals who are very, very much in tune with the body, as you are, James, when you were working out, you You understood if I put the bands this way or that way, if I ran this way, that way, your body literally felt differently.
Mhm.
One of the biggest effects that our body has is when we start to produce beta endorphins, which is one of the molecules that is produced by the body. And that's Dr. Sato, very early on, 23 years ago, he taught me, Steve, when you do KAATSU on someone, always finish with a KAATSU smile. That was his exact words. You want to finish a workout with a KAATSU smile. You don't want to finish a KAATSU workout when you're grimacing and you're in pain or whatever. You want to finish when you smile. Now, most people think when you put the bands on and then you take them off, we assume when we take them off, the KAATSU workout is over. It's actually not over. What happens is when you take the bands off, the body is still under stress. Your vascular tissue is still more elastic than normal, and the communication to your brain is still occurring. There is some slight delay in our test at the University of Tokyo Hospital. It's about a 12-minute delay where the human growth hormone peaks after you finish KAATSU. And that's why Dr. Sato said, we are hormonally optimized after KAATSU, which was really, really cool. And that's why he said, Steve, always aim for that smile. So, for example, we're working with sprinters. It could be in the pool, or it could be on the track, or it could be an NBA player that is shooting basketball. Let's say they're shooting 3-pointers. What we do in a standard workout is we ask the athlete to use the bands in the exact movement that they're going to do in the game. Exact motion. When they start off on the track and they go out for a sprint, or that NBA player, when is he going to pull up and shoot a jump shot? Do that over and over again until either they can't do it anymore or their technique falls apart. At that point, they take off the bands. They shake it out, hydrate a bit, wait a little bit. In our world, the KAATSU workout is still happening, even without the bands on, because physiologically, the effects of KAATSU are still going on. And then ideally, 12 minutes after, you have them do the exact same motion that they were doing with the bands on. So a jump shot, a 3-point shot, free throws, starting from the starting blocks, etc. And almost without exception, and we're talking about thousands or tens of thousands of athletes who've done this, when they do that jump shot, that start off the block, that swing of a bat, that swing of a golf club suddenly becomes much more agile, smoother, stronger, quicker, because they are metabolically optimized at that point. Mm-hmm. And we want the athlete to be training when they're metabolically optimized, when all of these healing hormones and helpful hormones are flowing through their body. So KAATSU is a tool, or the equipment is a tool that acts as a catalyst for all of these good things to happen in your body. And as an athlete, you want to train when your body is most capable. So if you're a hurdler, you want to use the KAATSU bands, put them on your legs, take them off, you shake out your legs, hydrate a bit, then do your hurdling exercises. And athletes tell us time and time again, I feel light, I feel fast, I feel smooth. It could be a dancer. We've worked with dancers. We've worked with performing artists, whether they're, they mess around on skateboards or bicycles, or, the acrobats that are going up, in the high acrobatic moves. All of these people know that spatial awareness they have. And, you have a great baseball hitter. He grabs the baseball bat and that ball is coming so fast and he just gets in the groove. And because of that, we have Major League Baseball players who actually use this in between the innings. because they want that hormonal response to be happening if they know that they're going to be up at bat. So it's how you use KAATSU has actually expanded beyond the weight room, beyond the gymnasium, and it's gone into fields all over the place. We have that same beta endorphins that we have for athletes. We have people who give TED Talks. We have people who make major presentations, pitches to Hollywood producers. You want to be hormonally optimized when you go to make your pitch or your speech or your whatever you're going to do. And that's very, very exciting for us and for the KAATSU users.
Of course. There's an aspect of potentiation there too, I would imagine. So with any of the track or the hurdlers where they say they feel light, I mean, it's the equivalent of doing jumps or something with a weighted vest on without that actual additional, well, you have additional pressure with the KAATSU with the bands on, but not really an actual load on you. So you're less prone to injury.
Yes, absolutely. So, it's very enjoyable for us to work with all kinds of people, old, young, able, disabled. One of our most recent success stories are we now work with amputees, people without limbs, arms, legs. Sometimes they're above the elbow, below the elbow. Sometimes they're above the knee, below the knee. Sometimes, unfortunately, in war, sometimes the entire leg is off. And their stump, what we call the residual limb, that there's neuropathic pain, there's phantom pain, etc. And now we're learning that this pressure on, pressure off, pressure on, pressure off reduces that kind of neuropathic pain and phantom pain. I'm not an amputee, so I can never put my own experience with their experience. So all I can do is I can show people, who are missing a limb, how to use this, and they are the ones who tell me of these effects. And so you were asking, or you're mentioning early on that you were using it 2 or 3 times a day. Well, the people who are missing limbs are using it multiple times a day because it just reduces that pain factor. And I don't know that sense of frustration or dread that I would have if I had their same pain. So when I do this, we get this feedback, and it just makes our lives so enjoyable to know that this technology is helping so many people.
I gotta imagine it's going to give you a KAATSU smile there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, what's the alternative? It'd be you could do this, which is pretty much benign and painless, or you'll be addicted to painkillers for the rest of your life, which
Absolutely.
Again, with the dread and everything like that. So no, it's a game changer.
Yes.
So this all sounds too good to be true. To anyone that is hearing this, like, okay, I don't need to go to the gym, lift heavy weights, and spend hours and hours in the gym in order to increase my cardiovascular health or get stronger, put on lean muscle tissue, or to relieve pain. So what would be some contraindications? Who can't use this? Would people on blood pressure medications or blood thinners, would this do anything that would be like negative to them? Or what about people that have blood clots?
Yeah. So let me address it sounds too good to be true. It frankly is too good to be true. It really is when we think about it, except when you explain KAATSU and what's actually happening in the body, it makes complete sense. The issue is you still have to put the bands on.
Yeah.
We at the end of the day, even if we've made muscle building, strength gains, stamina improvement, a possibility with the bands, you still have to do the physical effort of putting it on. And the good thing about KAATSU is usually people who try it for the first time have some sensation. Something's happening in my body that's different. And if we can do that, if we can hook them early, then they become consistent users of KAATSU. Some people have called us and said, I used KAATSU for a week. It was great. And then I went on vacation, or I got busy or something. And then all of those benefits went away. And I said, exactly. If you train your body, running or swimming or rowing, lifting, whatever you're doing, and you do that for 3 months, and then you stop and you don't do it for 3 months, you are going to get out of shape. Same with KAATSU. So the too good to be true always depends on frequency of use. So, and I always tell people, hey, the best thing to do with KAATSU is put the bands near where you spend most of the day. If you spend most of the day in your office, by a chair, by your computer, sitting in a chair, then do KAATSU while you're pounding out emails. Do KAATSU while you're doing work on your laptop. If you can't do KAATSU in the day, let's say you're a police officer or fireman or carpenter, school teacher, etc., then put the bands where you spend your relaxing part of the day, your couch, your living room, your kitchen, the break area, wherever you are. Put them on, because frequency is the driver of all these hormonal responses. So that is a very critical part of KAATSU. As your second question about counterindications, we do not recommend kids under the age of 14 do KAATSU. We didn't always have that, but I noticed when we were selling to especially the sort of sports obsessive fathers in our country, they want their little son or daughter to be this Olympic hero or professional athlete. They heard of KAATSU, they understood KAATSU, but these 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, their bodies are just forming. They're growing up. Let their bodies grow. When they get in high school, by all means, go ahead and do it. And we do have dozens and dozens of high school either teams or athletes who do KAATSU. And they range from ice skaters to football players. And they really span the spectrum of sports. So under the 14, we don't believe it's necessary. You can do it if you do it in moderation, and everything with KAATSU, everything in life should be in moderation, And then we also don't recommend for pregnant women. It's only that now that's only in the United States. Outside the United States, pregnant women use KAATSU. We're just afraid of any liability issues if the child or the birthing process has an issue. So other than those two, of course, everybody with any kind of serious health issue, and it could be some sort of disease, cerebral palsy, multiple sclerosis, any kind of cardiovascular disease, any kind of neurological disease, always, by all means, speak with your physician first. If anybody has a question, they can always email us, and we can provide your healthcare provider, your physical therapist, your cardiologist, your internist, etc., with medical information that will either answer their questions or reduce their concerns. So if anybody has any questions, just email us at info@kaatsu.com. We can provide you with case studies, medical information, academic research that your physician or therapist can read, and then they will then say, oh, okay, Sam, this makes sense. It's okay for you to use. So we always encourage that. We don't not encourage that. We very much want to reach everybody's physician and share with them the helpful aspects of KAATSU.
Of course. But other than that, no issues for people that have blood clots, blood pressure medications.
No, as long as they are following our protocols for those with cardiac issues. So that would mean, for example, always use the low pressure cycle. So we don't want them to go the high pressure cycle that a Navy SEAL or an NFL running back would do. Always low pressure. Always the cycle mode, pressure on, pressure off, never the constant mode. Always be well hydrated, always be sitting comfortably. And even in cases where, let's say, they live in Denver or the Rocky Mountain area, Park City, Utah, Denver, Colorado, etc., New Mexico, when you're at high altitude, the pressures of KAATSU should be lower. So we have these different protocols that we teach, and we want everybody to follow. James, you're over in South Florida. I'm in Southern California. We're very close to the sea level. Everything's fine. But when we're using in an airplane, when we use in a submarine, these are special places where the sea level pressure of KAATSU should be reduced. So we do have some caveats when you're using them in high altitude, or in an airplane, or in a place like a submarine or other very unique locations.
I think I actually just read that you guys are working with like deep sea divers.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So, what we want to do is, and we're in the process of this, is, and we have many years of research on this, is to use KAATSU in zero gravity conditions. So in space. We obviously have a lot of people in the United States and around the world that are looking at a mission to Mars. It'll take several months for the human species to get to Mars. Once they're at Mars, they have to do stuff, live, and perhaps some of them will want to return back to planet Earth. That's a long time for the human body to be in zero gravity conditions. Your muscle will degenerate, your bone density will decrease, and we are showing how KAATSU can, if not completely eliminate that, certainly reduce it significantly. And the research is out there, and we're just waiting for a chance to continue this research.
I was going to ask, like, what's the future of KAATSU? I think you just answered it. You guys are literally everywhere.
What?
Underwater, above us.
Yes, in the sky, on ground, and underwater. Yes, that's our. You literally want to be everywhere.
I think you should be too, because I feel like if this stuff, if the KAATSU was more accessible, if more people knew about it, it would spread like wildfire.
Yeah, and people like you help a lot. Just talking to you and bouncing off ideas and learning how you use it, hearing your feedback. That's how we change and grow our offerings. Everything we've done, previously we never worked with quadriplegics. We did work with disabled people. We went from someone who could not use one of their legs to others who couldn't use both of their legs to people who unfortunately can't use any of their limbs because of injuries or what have you. And working with quadriplegics taught us literally how KAATSU can be used even at that level. And when we see muscle growth for a quadriplegic who can't move their limbs and learn how to use KAATSU, that enables us to take the principles of KAATSU and expand it even further to people who are not quadriplegics, but they may be bedridden. We have plenty of people, who have long COVID. We have plenty of people who have different kinds of diseases. Maybe they traveled, somewhere around the world, got a tropical disease, and then now in bed for 6 months. What is their body going to do? So we take the experiences with a quadriplegic and we apply it to someone who is not necessarily a quadriplegic, but they just may be, very sick for extended periods of time. And therefore, we can keep that person's vascularity and muscularity optimized as their body starts healing itself. And so, as we grow, as we expand, we learn all of these different protocols that can be helpful for many more people.
I'm envisioning like little KAATSU studio gyms popping up and everything like that everywhere. Sorry, my brain kind of goes off on this.
That would be wonderful. When I first met Dr. Sato and we were traveling around the world, we would walk through major airports, Denver, Miami, JFK, LAX, SFO, London, Tokyo, etc. And we would be walking, and he's a very soft-spoken man. And he would say, he would tell me, hey, look at that person there. And I would look at the person, and he says, how would you apply KAATSU to that person? Now, I've never seen that person before. I don't know their background, but he taught me how to look at a person and assess without actually speaking with them. And we don't know if we're right or not, but it was a good thought process to go through. To look at that 35-year-old woman with 2 kids, to look at that 55-year-old man with a limp, to look at that teenage kid who had all the energy in the world. And we would go through these public places, and he would challenge me to go, how would you use KAATSU with this person? And there was no right or wrong. He just wanted me to go through that thought process to go, okay, that's a young boy. He's rather tall. He's probably on the basketball team. Maybe he had a, University of Maryland t-shirt on. Maybe that young boy wants to play NCAA Division I ball. Like, how can we get that young boy to increase his vertical leap, to increase his strength if he was slender? And we would go through these thought processes, and we would sit down, in the lounge or at our gate, and we would discuss this, quote, case. Mm-hmm. And it was great for me to learn from the man who created KAATSU, who literally, created BFR market from his imagination. And because he did use his imagination to create KAATSU, and then he used his body to test KAATSU and perfect KAATSU. And that's what he wanted me to have that training. And similarly, I want to share that information with people all around the world. And so ultimately, that's where we want to go. We want to share that information to you, James, and then we want you, James, to share the information with your listeners, with people you meet, and your colleagues, your family, your friends. And I think the world will be much better off for this.
I agree. Absolutely agree. I actually like that you mentioned that too. It's like, how would you apply KAATSU to this person? I never really thought about it that way, because it just gets the brain kind of going a little bit. And if you would have walked through, I think it was Fort Lauderdale Airport about 2 years ago, you would have been like, oh, I can't apply it to him. He's already using it in the airport. So I use this when I'm traveling. That way,
Absolutely.
I stay mobile. I don't have the aches and the pain. So it truly is a blessing.
Yeah.
Now, you've talked about the quadriplegics, and you've worked with pretty much every different population, it would seem. Now, I think it would be important to mention, we have the KAATSU cycle, we have the pressure on, the pressure off. So you're not always having this occlusion, or you're not having this lack of blood flow back to the heart. So what would be the dangers of restricting blood flow in those populations? So say, for instance, if someone just applied a tourniquet, or if someone just kept the band on training mode in someone that's not ready, like what if they left it on for too long?
Yes. So that would cause a problem. Most of these problems relate to someone getting lightheaded, because when you have the bands on, you have more than a greater amount than normal of blood in your arms or your legs. And especially if you're doing something aerobic, even walking, you can get lightheaded. So if you have the bands on too tight, use them for too long, or you do both of those things and you do some intense work, and KAATSU walking can be intense if the bands are too high a pressure or used for too long, you can faint. Fainting itself is okay, that the body's telling itself, hey, you're under way too much pressure. We need to go horizontal. We need the blood to go back to the brain, and then you wake up. But what happens when you faint and you're coming down and you hit your head on a rock, a curb, a weight, what have you? So we have protocols in place, and our products now have a limitation. if you have it on the training mode, or what we call the constant mode now, it shuts off after 10 minutes. In our very, very first models, we didn't have an automatic shut off. And in our current models, the very latest models, we actually ask the person their age, and then we use a percentage of time and pressure based on their age. So in other words, James, a 30-year-old will be able to do more KAATSU at higher pressure than a 90-year-old. And this is where we really want to go. We want to get it down so specific. So someone with, an age who's older will generally use a lower pressure for a shorter amount of time than someone who's younger and more fit in general. Now, that being said, we've observed that a lot of women, due to anatomical reasons, can withstand more pressure on their legs than the average guy. Mm-hmm. And the average man can withstand a lot more pressure on his upper body than the average woman, which makes anatomical sense. So, but then you always have, you might have a swimmer who's a great butterflyer. Well, her upper body is so well developed that she blows away most of the guys. And you may have, let's say, a gymnast who's got or an ice skater who has incredible strong legs, and he blows away all the women. So we always have differences, but where we're going is we want to customize KAATSU exactly for your specific use. And what we're doing now is we're collecting information across 49 countries, and we're really specifying how old are you, what's your average time under tension, what's your average and range of pressure. And within a fairly short amount of time, we'll be able to tell the average 49-year-old, the average 69-year-old, the average 19-year-old, hey, people of your age in this general fitness area are using KAATSU this way with this much pressure and this much time. And I think that will help everybody understand how best can we use KAATSU for your specific human condition.
Now, would you say that you need to work with a trainer? So I'm certified, but when you are introducing these to high school teams, are you leaving them with a strength coach that's certified, or are you just teaching them one time and then once they get the hang of it, that's it?
Yeah, so we do a few things. One, especially for our younger, I would say people under the age of 25, and you and I remember when we were 18, we could do anything. There was not anything that there was no limit.
Yeah, invincible.
Yeah. And so when you're dealing, especially for teenage boys, you gotta teach them right, or else they'll go crazy. And so when we go to high schools, when we go to colleges, and we do work with the teams, we make sure that their strength conditioning coach or their trainer, we teach them first. And then that person, before they put any bands on any kid, they use it themselves for at least 2 weeks. So they understand themselves what is the potential and what is the limitations of KAATSU. And then after that period of time, we go back, we talk, they will have lots of questions, and then they begin. We always recommend everybody starts in the low pressure mode. Doesn't matter if you're a Navy SEAL or a pro athlete, start at least one set in the low pressure mode, and then go up from there. On the reverse side, for the older people, the aging baby boomers, we have a webinar twice a week, and we always have a good crowd there. They ask very, very good questions, very basic questions. Like, I'm 75 years old, and I just don't recover from a 2-mile walk as fast as I did before. How can KAATSU help me? Or, I gardened all day yesterday and my back is killing me. Like, how can KAATSU help? Or, I know I need to lose a little bit of weight in my abdomen. What can I do with KAATSU to help? So, unlike the sports teams, which has a coach, a trainer, that we teach first, with the older group, we don't have these, unfortunately, we don't have the KAATSU gyms or clinics all over the United States yet. So we have to teach them in a group setting. And fortunately, one of the good things that came out was the use of Zoom, the familiarity to be online with people like you and I and just talk face to face. So that's really helped the aging baby boomers understand how they can specifically use KAATSU for their specific conditions.
That's awesome. I didn't know that you guys had those webinars.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 12 noon Eastern time.
Nice. I'll post that in the show notes.
Oh, great.
That's excellent though, because if anyone can purchase these, you'd want to know how to use it, and especially for the elderly population, they're the ones that probably need it the most, or the ones that could potentially benefit the most from it. So to have kind of all your bases in line, that's amazing. I'm really happy with what you guys are doing. But I mean, I've seen some of the magazines, and I know that there's like beauty benefits and stuff like that. People wrapping saran wrap around their bellies. So
oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. So our KAATSU Beauty is a completely separate application of KAATSU, but it makes total physiological sense because, you know, if we cut ourselves shaving, if we scrape our elbow, you know, we draw blood very easily. Just a little bit of scrape on our hands, on our foot. Let's say we're skateboarding. Let's say we trip. You know, if a woman is shaving her legs, if a man shaving her face, and we nick ourselves, immediately blood comes. This is an indication that there are so many capillaries right under our skin, right in our face, in our neck, wherever our body is. And that is exactly the part where KAATSU is most effective. And so if we can keep the vascular tissue of our capillaries that are right underneath the skin as elastic as possible, we will keep our skin as elastic as possible. And you say that to any woman in any culture, in any country around the world, and she knows it's true. Guys we're not necessarily that focused, but you know, we also want to look good. And so we also want to stay young. And the skin benefits of KAATSU, because it's so infused with capillaries, that's exactly where KAATSU is focused on, is unbelievable. And we call that area, we're not necessarily building muscle in these applications. We are actually maintaining our healthy skin. And so therefore we have a whole separate area called KAATSU Beauty. In some of these applications, we do wrap the body in cellophane. Here, what we're trying to do is withdraw as much moisture out of the body as possible. You're perspiring with KAATSU. So not only are you gaining the benefit of the increased elasticity of the capillaries that are right under the surface of the skin, but you're also removing any toxins with the sweat that you have. And it's unbelievable, this application. I mean, it feels like, I don't know, like a $300 facial all over your body. It's unbelievable.
So skip the Botox, skip the anti-wrinkle creams and stuff like that. And I've actually noticed too that my skin, after I use KAATSU, it like glows. It's almost like I have this little golden aura around me. My skin is just fantastic.
Yes. And that's because the blood vessels right under the surface of your skin have expanded. It's exactly the reason. And that makes the skin glow. So we do KAATSU for different models. We're talking about fashion models. So whether they're we call them a leg model, a hand model, you know, when you open a magazine or you go online and you don't see the photo of the model's face, you just see her hand or, you know, her leg or maybe her lower back or whatever it is. What we do, not all the models, obviously, but some models, we actually do KAATSU focusing on that body part. And just like your skin The photographers love it, absolutely love it, because now the skin is so healthy looking. So like you said, it's got a glow to it. And that creates the great photo.
Wow.
Yeah.
So any of the ladies that are listening to this, you have another reason to buy KAATSU.
Yes. We're talking about KAATSU Beauty. What we do, we actually have a special program. It was developed by a doctor in Japan. It's 7 days of KAATSU, intense KAATSU, before the bride's wedding. And the idea is that you really prepare the body so fine-tuned. And the Japanese, who are so good at extreme detail, you start 7 days before and you go through a very specific protocol. Day 6, day 5, day 4, day 3. So on her wedding day, she is just as beautiful as you can be.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You guys got it all.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to see it. I was looking at that, and brides are usually, or it's meant to celebrate this woman's life, both up until then and her future. And for her to glow and to not only be beautiful but feel beautiful, that's the epitome of a good wedding, of a great wedding. And so the Japanese have fine-tuned the system with KAATSU and the cellophane, and things like rose water and a variety of other tools that they use to really make that, when she smiles, man, it just radiant.
Wow. I'm amazed by this. I mean, that's such a great selling point too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and with that, most people come to KAATSU because they've heard it from a friend or they've seen it from someone they trust. So we don't do any mass marketing. We're not in Costco. We're not in, Dick's Sporting Goods or anything. So usually when people come to us, they already have some level of experience from somebody else they know or trust. And so that helps us a lot. But everybody's got a different position in life, different, some people want to run a 10K for the first time in their lives. Some people just, their right shoulder is killing them. Some people just want to lose weight or be able to open a jar of jelly or butter or whatever it is. And so we help these people and their very specific needs. And we do that through Zoom nowadays. So I'll send you the link.
Excellent. Awesome. Thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Cool.
my pleasure.
It's a very easy and effective way to improve everyone's quality of life.
Absolutely.
Very simply put.
Yeah. You nailed it right there.
Yeah. Well, Steve, what advice would you have for anyone that is looking to improve their health overall? Where do you start?
You start by actually doing things in moderation. I think, we all get excited about something. Mm-hmm. We buy a stationary bicycle. We buy a pair of shoes. We get something and we're quite excited. And I think, our excitement level goes up real high in the beginning, and then life happens and we get busy at work or school, whatever. And then that enthusiasm falls down. I think if it was a curve, we'd actually just don't be so gung-ho in the beginning, but maintain that very standard level of enthusiasm, because our lives are so long. Mm-hmm. We, instead of going up, enthusiastic, whatever, gung-ho, and then forget about it. If we have this nice, long, steady, sort of the old fable about the hare and the tortoise, just go slow and steady, and be moderate. And it's worked in my life. And so that would be my bit of advice.
That's great. That's actually something that I'm coming to terms with myself right now.
I must admit, when I was in my 20s, it was more like, let's go for it.
Yep. No, and the tortoise and the hare is like a great little analogy there, because whenever I'm out on my little trails or anything with my partner, I'm the one that wants to like go, go, go. I sprint, 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 and then I'm there waiting for her, and she's just enjoying her time, looking at everything, taking it in. I'm like, huh, I'll get there. Either way, I'm gonna get there, but it doesn't need to be so fast. And if I just stop and take this in and enjoy it, I might have a little bit more fun.
Yes, absolutely. So listen to your partner.
I will. Awesome. Well, Steve, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this, brother. Uh,
Yeah, that's great.
and where can people find you? I don't know if you're on social media.
Yeah, we it's kaatsu.com, so KAATSU.com. And there at the bottom of our homepage, you'll see, our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram. We do what we can, and we have a blog. James will be on your podcast, and that's really cool. So we have a magazine. We have probably 50 or 60 issues of magazines. And those are all real life testimonials or stories or case studies that people have shared with us. And so, we have a lot of stories about people who are over the age of 70, many people who are working adults, and many young people. So, all of those are free. We're not selling the magazines. We're using the magazines as a teaching tool. And quite often, if we see somebody who mirrors our own age, our own walk of life, I'm a dad, and I got my company. I'm so busy. I have my kids. There's so many things going on. Put the KAATSU right by your desk, right near your couch, and just use KAATSU in order, as you mentioned, to increase or improve the quality of your life. If you're a mother and you've got a job and you have 3 kids at home and things are just happening all the time, you don't have enough time to focus on your own health, your own well-being. Put these, it could be in the kitchen, it could be in your office cubicle, it could be on your bedstand, wherever it is, use it, and you will see the benefits in a very short amount of time.
Absolutely agree, brother.